We're working through all the free video tutorials for the Husqvarna Viking Designer Epic 3. Now this one's going to be the major one. We're going to walk you through everything you need to know to embroider a design from start to finish. Hi, I'm Sarah from sewingmastery.com, where we do free video tutorials on current models as well as online courses. So I'll be talking about a few of our most popular embroidery online courses. So if you're ready to up your game and master this entire machine, you'll want to click on those links down below and check them out. There's always videos in every course that you can preview for free to see if that online class is right for you. So we're going to walk through basics of hooping, how to set up the machine, a quick understanding of threading your machine so you're always successful with your embroidery machine, and we'll pick a built-in design and play around with some lettering. So we're going to end up here once we're all done. Let's start by switching out our sewing machine foot, putting on the embroidery foot, and then let's talk about your straight stitch throat plate, which I want you to pull out and plan to use every time that you're doing embroidery. So you'll need your magnetic screwdriver. So just a reminder, this is a screwdriver to be used gently inside here. It allows you to quickly set it on the screw and twist. Now, if you're having to twist really hard, you might have tightened things too tight. So keep that in mind. It's meant for gentle tightening and releasing. For putting on the embroidery foot, you do take off the entire ankle. So go ahead and release that. I do like to store this part here with the white ankle on. So if you have removed your foot and you've taken off this little guy, why don't you find one of your commonly used feet, reattach it, then store this away. This is a lot easier to find than a white kind of random ankle at the bottom of a white accessory box. Ask me how I know. All right, so we'll store that away. A little trick for the embroidery foot. So make sure that you are using a genuine Husqvarna Viking embroidery foot sensor cue. And with it, it is spring loaded. So I'm going to show you the easiest way to attach this. If you go to put it on, it's kind of like you're forcing it and you have to kind of work it on. Here is the trick. Before I get all the way down here, I do want to point out that the foot, this little arm here, will be resting on your or on top of the needle screw. So when I come around to this point, you're going to notice that you can almost get this on, but you almost have to like squeeze it to get it to fit on. Here is the trick. If you just set it here, so the needle is aligned to pretty much be right above the circle of the foot, and then take your other hand and turn the hand wheel about halfway, meaning I'm turning the needle down, and it will probably look like it's going through the foot, which it is, but look, now it actually is around the post that it needs to be on, and it will make it really easy for you to line up this screw. I usually get it started with my fingers like this, and then take that magnetic screwdriver, give it a little twist till it hops on, and then just a nice tighten. You want to be firm but not like over tighten. And that's same for true when you're using it to take your needle in and out. The idea is that you're never cranking down on your needle. Yes, we are going to switch out our needle to an embroidery needle. I happen to have a box of, I know they say FAF, but Husqvarna Viking and FAF are the same company. This is a 100 pack. If you can find this at your local store, pick those up. I'll put a link below to a 100 pack of embroidery needles. They are so much cheaper. I find my students will change them out more often when you don't feel like you have to like be counting, okay, that was my fourth needle out of my pack of 5. Look how many needles there are in here. They are amazingly, yes, and they will last, and you will love having the accessibility to those. So check those out, and like I said, I'll put a link below where you can also purchase them. So for changing out your needle, just a gentle turn. I am going to bring this all the way back up just so it's a little easier. Flat side to the back. This is a new needle, so I'm really just showing you what we need to do. Gentle tighten, so you don't over tighten that too much. The other side of the screwdriver, since we're here, let's go ahead and remove our zigzag throat plate and switch it over to our single hole throat plate. That just kind of makes everything a lot more stable as you are stitching. I mean, really, the needle only goes up and down in the center needle position, so that's perfect. I've also wound a bobbin with bobbin thread. It is a little finer thread, so if you haven't found yourself with that yet, definitely purchase and wind, a whole pack of bobbins for your embroidery. That's what I do. I'll put that in, put that little cover on, and we are ready to thread our machine next. Here's one little trick I always make sure my students get in the habit of doing when they're threading the machine. Before we get there, good quality embroidery thread is key. If you're buying it and it seems like a good deal, it could be not the greatest. So I always use Isacord branded thread. It works on all my machines. It is so lovely. So here's what I want to kind of bring to your attention. When you're threading your machine, you want to thread with two hands. We're coming around the back side. I'm still holding with my right hand, but I'm threading with my left hand because what I want to do is I want to come down and up, and then I'm going to do a little floss. That makes sure that your thread gets all the way in that top tension, nice and deep, so when you're embroidering, you don't get those big hairy loops on the back of your embroidery hoop. We're all threaded, ready to go. Let's talk about how we pull designs in, how we can play with some letters, and let's get started with helping you try out one of your first embroidery designs. We're going to start by a quick description of how to clear off your entire screen. Now, since I have more than 2 items on screen, if you come down to the trash can, there's a little tiny arrow in the bottom right corner of the trash can icon, meaning if I touch and hold it, I get another option, which is delete all designs, and I'm going to go ahead and touch yes. So deleting is just clearing, so we're not like removing them from the machine or your USB stick. It's just a quick way to get rid of everything. So we're going to start by exploring our built-in designs. Start by touching the little picture of the flower. And your built-in designs, oh my gosh, there's so many in here, but I'm in the theme designs, so there's lots of categories up at the top here, and as you come across and then scroll down, you can find lots of options. I was looking for one that when I selected it, it didn't have a ton of color changes and it didn't have a ton of stitches. So just to make things stitch out a little faster. So if you touch a design, it will give you that information just right at your fingertips, how many colors, which is a good idea because I was going to pick this one, but then I noticed it had 10 color changes and I didn't think I wanted to do that. So I picked something with just the 2. Touch and hold that design to bring it in. Now, one of the things that people always ask me is like, well, which hoop am I going to use? Well, when you bring in a design, it will actually pick the hoop size that will best fit the design size. Now, right up here, the hoop size says 120 by 120, so I can tell that this is less than 5 inches square, but I am going to be actually using a different hoop size. So it's now my responsibility to come down to hoop options and tell it which hoop I plan to use, because I'm actually going to bring in more like the word winter to go with it. So 240 by 150 is what I'm going to do, and touch hoop options to go ahead and close that out. Now you see we have a little bigger playground for our design here, and we can definitely add more things. We could even add 2 of these if we wanted to. We have the option anytime a design is selected, so when there's a box around it, that means you can size it, you can rotate it, and you can move it. So you can do it in a couple ways. You can do it with the icons down here. Right now I'm in a sizing option because that's the one highlighted. So I can make that bigger or smaller, 20%. I can also do an undo. So if I want to go back to where we started, I have an undo feature right up here at the top. Also here, I can rotate that design, so I can just touch that little circle and give it a twirl, and again, undo if I want to undo it. But I also have rotation as an option down here, from doing it in small increments with these little arrows, or doing it a full 90 degrees, which on this design is not really an option, doesn't really do much to it. And then of course, if we just want to touch and drag it, we can move it anywhere within this. But to tell you the truth, I don't always, and you saw I kind of zoomed in, so there is the 2-finger option to zoom in or out, or you can come here and zoom to hoop and kind of bring that back out. I don't usually do a lot of movement at this point. I'll just get the design on the screen, add what other words or lettering I might want to do, and then I'll use something on the next screen for actually positioning it based on my fabric and what I've marked for that particular placement to be. So don't feel like you have to get it exact at this point. So sizing is important, rotating and moving. And if we want to add some letters, we have the option to go into built-in letters. And we see lots of different fonts here, and the numbers beside those fonts are actually the size that they will come in as. So some of them are meant to be much smaller than others. We also find that your larger fonts, like there's some bigger ones that are just of a larger size, but since I'm not using a huge hoop, I am going to pick something kind of the medium size. Let's just go down to, how about this one, size 20. Up will pop your keyboard where you can then type in your letters, uppercase, lowercase, and all the other punctuation that you might want to use. You do have the options for, say, putting it on a curve if you want. So you can see that that is actually, you can do curves above or below, gentle or more. I'm going to just leave it normal. We'll touch the little arrow to go down, and then I can move this around to wherever I want that to actually be. So touch and drag it. I do you kind of notice that it kind of jumps around, and there is a line that's going to appear in the center. When I get close to the center, that means that the two designs are lined up, and then I can let go, and those will be perfectly aligned. They're very close to each other there. And I can use this arrow to kind of move it up and just get everything perfectly positioned to my liking. In other words, what you see is exactly what you're going to get. Now, before we get to the stitch out screen, which this is what we'll touch next, let's talk about a few tips for hooping. Now, if this seems like a lot of information and you feel, oh my goodness, we have a course called Machine Embroidery 101. So I talk for about 4 hours on stabilizers and hoopings, different embroidery techniques to learn and experiment with. That course would be ideal. It's actually the course we recommend you take before you even start embroidering. So once again, that link will be down below, and we recommend that you watch some of the free videos so you can see if that course might be beneficial for you. Remember, when you buy one of our courses, you own it for life. So that means you can always go back and rewatch it as many times as you'd like. Plus, we've got a handful of projects that are in that course to also get you some projects to start with. When hooping fabric, one of the things that you're going to want to have is some type of work surface. I like to be able to stand, so that means like your cutting table would be a great solution for standing up and hooping fabric. I've got some room behind the machine, so that's why I'm over here. I also take a look at my hoop. I wanted to have the part that's going to attach to the embroidery arm over here on the left side. We have this open and release, quick release area down in this bottom corner. And I'm also holding it the way I can read the size of the hoop. And I point that out because so many times people get these hoops spun around, and actually, that's right, the new hoops are actually oblong, and you can't get them in upside down. But some of the other hoops you can. So I always get my students in the habit that you always want to read the size that you're working with, and it's right down at the bottom. Now I'm working with just some cotton fabric today. So one of the things I like to do is actually partner it with 2 layers of tearaway stabilizer, and I am a fan of 505 spray. This is something that I do use. It's like Post-it note in a can. You can spray your layers together. Yes, you can see I have used this before in a demonstration, but the spray does dissipate, so that means that a little refresh will be needed. Now the reason I do this is because, let's do this. So I'm going to smooth that all down. Is when you go to hoop, if you don't use the spray adhesive and you go to hoop, you can easily stretch your fabric out of shape. So with that 505 spray kind of partnering the fabric and the stabilizer together, can you see you can't stretch it? Like even on the bias, I mean, it is secure. So that makes it super easy to get where you want. Now, if you had some lines on your fabric, this will be something that you'll want to kind of work to get it lined up. But honestly, I'm going to tell you, don't worry about that, because this machine has what is called design positioning. And if I could rename it, it would be the I can hoop crooked function. So it doesn't matter if you're on or off. It is a wonderful feature. We actually also have a design positioning masterclass. Again, we'll put a link to that particular class in the description below. And that is a fun quilt that you can learn to rehoop and master that part. So what you want to do is work to get the top part in first. But if it's going in kind of hard and you can't get the two hoops to kind of mash together, don't force it. What you want to do is come over to the screw, loosen that up even more, probably more than you think you need to. And sometimes what I'll do is actually slide the hoop off the table, because then I can actually pull on that bottom hoop and kind of pull it open and then press down. So see how easy it was to finally just push that in? Now I'm not done yet, because I have to go ahead and close this clip. Now if I'm pushing really hard and I can't close it, again, open that screw up even more. Yes, all the layers do make it kind of thick. Close it, then tighten with your fingers as much as you can. Now before you're all the way done and before we go back to our machine, one last little trick. Take your thumbs on the inside hoop, push a little further, past flush, just enough, because otherwise this is going to make your hoop a little quieter. Hear it rubbing on the table. This will help make sure that you've got all your edges fully together and even just maybe a little past. And now, quiet as it's moving around. So before we're doing any embroidery, this is our Embroidery Essentials online course, our most popular course that we offer. It is over 5.5 hours of information, techniques, the designs are included. It's not about finishing this quilt, but it's about learning techniques and mastering. Every time you do one of these blocks, you do something different on your screen. I always tell my students that do you remember the books that were like Choose Your Own Adventure? So you start here, but then you like deviate, and you might end up on one finished story, and then somebody else will end up on another finished story. So every block has a different ending, and I love that as a way to learn your machine. So I'm going to just slide that off to the side. Now, as soon as you have your hoop ready and your fabric ready to stitch, do not put it on the embroidery arm. See how far away it is? It won't let you, and the reason for it is because this arm's going to move in, and it doesn't want you to hit that foot. So I just set this somewhere in the middle. Maybe I'm somewhere under my foot like that. And as soon as I'm ready over here, we're going to go down to Stitch Out. Stitch Out is where we get to have all the embroidery features. So on the previous screen, which is our edit screen, this is where we design our project, bringing in multiple designs. And then when we're ready to embroider, we go to a second screen. So you're always working between the first screen and the second screen. So Stitch Out. There's always this little kind of separator here. These are your settings. Like, it recognized that I put my straight stitch stroke plate in. I've told it that I'm using the sensor Q-foot. It's also thinking that I'm going to put on the 240 by 150 hoop, which I am, but for any reason that doesn't match, that will actually pop up a little message that says, please change your hoop to the one you're going to use. So I love that option. There is a new option here, don't show this information again, so if you want to do that, you can check that box. Here comes that embroidery arm, watch out, here she comes. And then it says, now you can attach hoop. So for attaching this particular hoop, it's just a lift, press, and click. So you're just attaching it to that point, and then to release it, we'll be pushing on this silver part, which actually just lets it come up. Very new bracket for us, so I love this, and it is a lot simpler than the other ones. Not that the other ones were hard, it's just this was so much easier now. We can open up the Stitch Out progress, so we have the option to seeing what colors are going to be stitched first, which one is second, and if I need to back up or go forward through a design, I will be doing all of that in the Stitch Out progress. I also have the option for exact positioning, which by its previous name, design positioning. This is where we use it to position wherever you are on the screen. We'll not really use it today, but we're going to do a whole separate video on design positioning or exact positioning, so allowing you to hoop crooked, which absolutely wonderful. But you can use this to kind of trace around the design so you can see at which corner your design or how big it's going to be. So you can go ahead and touch each of these and it will travel to that particular one, including how to find the center of your design. You do have to be on step 2 to get it to move, and you can go all the way around it. So for right now, we're just going to confirm or X out. We didn't really change anything in here, and it's ready to stitch the first color. But let me show you one thing I like to do. Let's open up our color palette and choose ghost mode. So right now on our design, which by the way, you can kind of touch and drag it so it's right beside the color information. Sometimes I like to do this, kind of position the two next to each other. I can kind of watch everything stitch out. Even if I opened up Stitch Out Progress, I'd have that open as well. But right now, if you had a design with lots and lots of colors, you're going to find it's hard to know sometimes, is that the black area or is that the dark gray area? But if you go to what's called ghost mode, it will hide everything that it's not going to be embroidering during this color segment, and it will show you in the darkest area what it is actually going to stitch. So I decided I wanted white here, and then I'm actually doing blue where those satin stitch petals are, and then I can decide what I want to do the letters with. So you can always jump around just like I did at any given time. So let's go ahead and start. I mean, really, all you do is push the Start Stop button, and it's going to go ahead and start with that first particular color. We'll let it stitch, and I'll meet you at the color change. This is a perfect time to talk about the free MySewNet app that you can download, and it will monitor your stitch out progress. So if you like to wander away from your embroidery machine, it will pop up a notification that it's time to change color, or if your bobbin's low, or any of the messages that might have stopped the embroidery machine from running. So if you haven't done that, and this is a perfect time also to talk about our Husqvarna Viking Bootcamp online course. This is all about the free stuff in the MySewNet world, and that's like an ecosystem. I know people get kind of confused, and it's a lot, and that's why we decided to break it down into segments so you can learn what actually was included with your machine. And all of these are free. So as we say with that course, there's absolutely no supply list. Like everything came with your machine. So if you do have a phone or a tablet, we can connect you up, we can connect you and teach you all the things that were part of your purchase. So it did pop up and said to change color. So I am going to go ahead and put my other color on and just do a quick re-thread here. Remember that floss, thread the needle, and touch the start button one more time. Are you loving the needle threader? When I do use that needle threader during embroidery, don't feel the need to fish that out of the back. So just go ahead, you can just go ahead and start, and away we go. So it says what stitch we're on, and it tells me how long this next color will be. I could also look here and kind of see how that progress is, and off it goes. Here's a little trick for when you stitch out letters. So as you can see on the screen, there is a separator or a color stop for every single letter. So if you had a lot of letters, it's going to stop in between all of them. So there's two things that you can do. You can set the machine to be a one color design from here on out, and it will stitch from the W to the R without stopping. The other thing you could do, and this sometimes actually happens by accident, is you notice that the stop button has a light on it. If you push that stop button, that also is a quick way to turn something into a monochrome, meaning you don't want it to stop. So if you have the light, it stops in between color changes, but if you accidentally turn that off, it's going to stitch through everything. And if you're not watching, that could actually be, well, I've done that, where I accidentally touched it, I came back, and I'm like, I wonder why it didn't stop, and it's done, and it's all in the one color that I last had it on. So, but here is where we actually want it to be this particular way. So we're going to go ahead and start stitching, and we'll finish stitching all the letters at once, and we'll take a look at it at the end. I love the message. Your embroidery is finished. So let's talk about a few things like tension and how the back is supposed to look. So when you're done, you can go ahead and touch OK, and then touch the arrow at the top to return to the other screen. So go ahead, you can take your hoop off. The embroidery arm moves off to the side, and we can see what we have. That looks really good. I am going to show you what the back looks like. Now, before I flip it over, I know what we're going to see. We're going to see a lot of threads, and even though they're white on most of these, one of the things that people will sometimes say is that they see a lot of threads or leftovers on the back. Well, on this particular design, when we had the white areas, do you notice that on the front right now, I don't have anything to trim? Like, it did the little area and it's locked it and then cut the thread and then moved to the next one and then stitched it, cut the thread and moved. Well, each time it cuts the thread, it pulls the threads to the back and slices them off. On the back side, like I said, because it's white stabilizer and that was a white thread area, we're not seeing a ton of it, but there is a lot going on in that particular area. So sometimes people say this looks messy. So what you could do, and I do this sometimes, especially in between letters. Oh yeah, maybe we can see. Yeah, here's a better choice. Like, so it cut the blue thread in between each letter. So there's kind of like this little extra area. If these letters were smaller, there would have been even more kind of threads to see. So you can actually go into the machine and turn off the thread cutter. So that's in the settings area. And so what it'll do is it won't actually cut between your areas, but what it does make the back look absolutely gorgeous. So, and then you just take regular curved scissors and trim between, which is what we used to do many, many years ago. So depending on if your back is going to be visible, some people really like the option of being able to turn off your thread cutter, and that's what I would do. All right, what does it really look like on the back side? What are we looking for tension? So I'm going to really kind of point down into the blue area here. Do you see where the blue thread has pulled to the back side? And there's blue on both sides of the satin stitch, and you can kind of see the white bobbin thread through the middle. That is good looking tension. So for any reason that I would have had some white thread coming up to the top here, and I was seeing my bobbin thread, what I would do is come over to, there's a tension area, and I would reduce that number. So it's usually like 50, and I would bring it down to say 40, maybe 35 at the most, and just see if that looks better. So that's kind of what we do when we are looking at tension. And don't be afraid to change it. We are usually using a different weight of thread in our bobbin than we are for embroidery. So there is that fine balance that needs to happen. Do remember, you do need to change your needle often. You do need to clean out underneath your throat plate, especially if you've been working through some fluffier fabrics, battings, and cotton fabrics, fleeces. All those fluffy fabrics will build up extra length. So if you're getting any thread breaks and your machine stops, those are things that you can do to clean it out and be back up and running in no time. I hope this video has been helpful, so make sure you're clicking like on each of our videos. Click subscribe so you see all the new stuff that we are filming, and also the links in the description below to all the online courses that were mentioned in this tutorial. We hope to see you in one of our classes soon.